Hello, and welcome back to the Safe, Seen, and Stretched book study. I'm author Schmidt Hasson, and this week we're unpacking the last chapter, Chapter 12, Lessons on Impact. We know that making an impact on our students' lives can happen serendipitously. We say the right thing to the right student at the right time. But consistent impact happens with intention. When we think about the kinds of educators we want to be, and we use that vision to help guide our actions and interactions in the classroom. Leaving a legacy happens with intention and consistency. So let's talk about impact. We really don't know what small moments students will remember from their time with us. We don't know what lessons they will carry and continue to use throughout their lives. But one thing I've learned is that what students remember most is the way they felt in a teacher's classroom. And we can be very intentional about how we want our students to feel. When we can act and interact in ways that help elicit those feelings. We can create experiences that help students feel the way we intend for them to feel in our classroom. Chapter 12 takes us back to the beginning of the book, to the farmer's market, and there I met a woman named Shay who talked about the feeling of excitement she had in Mr. Hall's art class. Every year, Mr. Hall would take the students from their small town into Philadelphia to the art museum and a restaurant. And Shay just remembers feeling so excited. She said all day, all I could say was, wow, about my experience in this city. She's so grateful to Mr. Hall for creating that excitement about her future, for making her think differently about the possibilities for her life. And I know many of his students must carry great memories from that trip, from that day, and also a sense of gratitude to him for creating that kind of excitement. In this chapter, I talked about attending a memorial service for one of my mentors, Dr. Earl Leonard. Dr. Leonard has been a teacher in the district and worked his way up to superintendent. But he always held on to this commitment to build strong relationships with everyone in the district and the people in the community. And I realized at that service that his legacy wasn't in this high school with his name on it. It was in the hearts and minds of the people lined up outside of Leonard High School waiting to go into the service and pay their respects. Person after person stood up and told a story about the way Dr. Leonard impacted their lives, but mostly about the way he made them feel. And one of those stories stuck with me. It was Dr. Jim Hamilton, who it turns out had been Dr. Leonard's teaching intern when Dr. Leonard was a young teacher. Back then, they weren't Dr. Leonard and Dr. Hamilton. They were just Jim and Earl. And when Jim told this story, he said, Earl made me get in his truck one day. We drove through the community where the students lived, who we would serve, and we stopped in front of this old house. There was a big puddle of standing water in front of the house. This is in Florida, which means there were mosquitoes. It was hot. The window was open, and there was no screen on the window. And Jim remembers Earl turning to him and saying, there's a baby in that house. And our job is to make life better for that baby. And as these two men progressed through the ranks in the district, they held on to that purpose. Our job is to make things better. And that purpose really drove Dr. Leonard's legacy. He was so committed to making life better for the people in the district, especially for the students we served. And that purpose drove all of his actions and interactions. It really speaks to building a legacy and how that's built on intention, how it's built on an intentional purpose and a mission, and consistently sticking to the values related to that mission and that purpose. Safe, Seen, and Stretched really does end exactly where it began, in the farmer's market with Ellen, who shared a story about Mr. Dillon, The speech teacher she remembers from 7 decades ago. She remembers him as having been this great orator, this well-known speech teacher in her town. And she remembers him being diagnosed with throat cancer and promising the students he would come back to teach after treatment. When he came back, his body was weak. He didn't have the voice he used to have. It took the students a little time to adjust to this different version of Mr. Dillon, but they slowly realized he was the same in every way that mattered, and they started to see him as just Mr. Dillon again. Ellen says the greatest lesson she learned from him was not a lesson he planned and taught in the classroom. It was a lesson he modeled with his life, a lesson about overcoming, about bravely facing challenges, about persisting through adversity. For us as teachers, our legacies are so much more than the lessons we teach in the classroom. They're the lives we live, the models we put in front of students every day. And I think about the impact we have on our students, the impact of Mr. Dillon. Because of what he taught Ellen, she carried that memory for decades. It influenced the way she connected with other people in the world. It influenced the way she dealt with challenges in her own life. And because she shared this story with me, it influenced my life. Our impact really is ripples. We never know how far it will go. Don't ever underestimate the impact you have on the world because of the impact you have on your students. Reflection question 1. What do you hope students will remember from their time with you? Years from now, what stories do you hope they will tell from their time in your classroom? What stories do you hope they will tell about you? Pause the video if you need to. Coming up, reflection question 2. Reflection question 2. What kind of people do you hope your students will become because of your impact? How do you hope to help shape their lives now and into the future? Pause the video if you need to. Coming up, this week's challenge. Since this is our last chapter, this is our last challenge. Here it goes. Set an intention for helping students feel safe, seen, and stretched in your classroom every day. As you're planning lessons or setting up procedures, think about doing that in a way that elicits those feelings of safe, seen, and stretched. Let that guide you as you take action and as you interact with your students. They will never forget feeling that way in your classroom, and you will continue to shape their lives long after they leave you. Thank you for reading the book. Thank you for following along with this book study. I'm so grateful for you, and I know your students are grateful for you as well.
Don't miss any of our upcoming content. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. And we'd love it if you'd head over to Amazon and leave a review of Safe, Seen, and Stretched in the Classroom. It will help other readers find the book.